ਪਿਛੋਕੜ ਆਈ ਗੈਸ ਮੈਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰਦੀ ਹਾਂ। ਮੇਰਾ ਜਨਮ ਰਿਚਮੰਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੀਗਾ ਇਨ 1986 ਅਤੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਪਿਤਾ ਜੀ 1972 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਆਏ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਪਿਛੋਕੜ ਸੀਗਾ ਮੋਗੇ ਇਨ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਇਨ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਮੋਗਾ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਇੱਥੇ ਆਏ ਫॉर ਬੈਟਰ ਲਾਈਫ ਐਂਡ 2 ਭਰਾ ਆ ਮੇਰੇ, ਇੱਕ ਵੱਡਾ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟਾ, ਅਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਰਿਚਮੰਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਲੇ ਹਾਂ। ਥੋੜ੍ਹੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਦੇਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਵੈਨਕੂਵਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ। ਸੋ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੇਰਾ ਜਨਮ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਵੈਨਕੂਵਰ 'ਚ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਉਦੋਂ, ਅਤੇ ਵੈਨਕੂਵਰ ਤੋਂ ਫਿਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਵੈਂਚੁਅਲੀ ਰਿਚਮੰਡ ਆ ਗਏ ਸੀਗੇ, ਅਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਸਾਰੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਬੇਸਿਕਲੀ ਫਰਮ ਦੀ ਏਜ ਆਫ ਆਈ ਵੁੱਡ ਸੇ 5 onwards until I got married, I lived in Richmond. ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਘਰੇ ਸਿਰਫ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ। ਮੇਰੇ ਮੰਮੀ ਅਤੇ ਡੈਡੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਕੱਲੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ। ਨਾਨਕੇ ਵੀ ਸੀਗੇ, ਉਹ ਅੱਡ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ, ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਤੋਂ ਆਇਆ ਇਨ ਦ 80s, ਅਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਉਹ ਮੁੜ ਕੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਅੱਡ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਇਕੱਲੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਹੋਈ ਚੱਲੀ ਆ ਘਰੇ। ਅੱਜ ਤੱਕ ਵੀ ਜੇ ਮੈਂ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਦੀ ਹਾਂ ਮੰਮੀ ਡੈਡੀ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਂ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਹਾਂ, ਅਸੀਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ 'ਚ ਹੀ ਬੋਲਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਅਤੇ ਭਰਾਵਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਚੱਲਦੀ ਆ। ਛੋਟੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਨੇ ਮੈਂ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ, 5 ਸਾਲ ਦੀ ਹੋਊਂਗੀ, ਅਤੇ ਕੁਝ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣੀ। ਆਈ ਯੂਜ਼ਡ ਟੂ ਕ੍ਰਾਈ ਸੋ ਮਚ, ਆਈ ਹੇਟਡ ਇਟ, ਅਤੇ ਮਮ ਐਂਡ ਡੈਡ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਨਾ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਾ ਪੈਣਾ ਆ, ਅਤੇ ਆਈ ਵੁੱਡ ਕਮ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਂਗ ਹੋਮ ਐਂਡ ਆਈ ਟੂ ਦਿਸ ਡੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ, ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਇਟ ਵਾਜ਼ ਜਸਟ it was dry. That's what it was, and it wasn't entertaining, and it was ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਾਡੀ class ਸੀਗੀ, it was multi-grades, so I think looking back that was kind of scary. ਮਤਲਬ ਵੀ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਛੋਟੀ ਸੀਗੀ, 5 ਸਾਲ ਦੀ ਸੀ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਨਿਆਣੇ ਵੀ ਸੀਗੇ ਕਲਾਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, so that kind of made me feel scared or insecure. I don't know what the right word is there, but it was an awkward feeling, so I didn't like it. ਅਤੇ ਸੋ ਫਿਰ eventually ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ 9ਵੀਂ ਗ੍ਰੇਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਈ, ਅਤੇ ਹਾਈ ਸਕੂਲ ਕੈਂਬੀ ਸੈਕੰਡਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ they were offering ਪੰਜਾਬੀ. That's where I went to high school, Canby Secondary. That was it. Simrat Olik was my Punjabi teacher, and she's the reason I can read, write, and speak. So before that, it was like broken pieces. Yes, ura ala penti ondi sigi, but it wasn't until then. But the various Punjabi schools that I've gone to, starting at John Oliver, there was a night school there. Canby Secondary, there was a night school there, and then Kent Avenue Canadian Sikh Studies, there was a night school there. So I've been to like all 3, and then it was just like, please mom, please dad, don't send me there. Right? So that's kind of my background. I would say a little bit of bullying, aale duale ta hundi sigi, not necessarily to me, but like, yeah, I mean, when you're in these classes, like with several like age, it's like multi-grade, right? Multi-leveled. The older kids, they're making fun of the teacher, they're making fun of each other, there's slingshots, like, there's all this. So there's really poor structure basically in a class. And you just kind of felt like there was no teacher to like kind of influence proper discipline, and it was just like, oh yeah, and then they would just get really, really mad, and then they'd turn around and the same stuff would start. So it was a little bit awkward, yeah. It's funny, ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਹੋਇਆ ਕੋਈ ਸੈਂਟੀਮੈਂਟ ਵੀ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਸਿੱਖਣੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ because ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਇੰਪੈਕਟ ਹੋਗੀ। ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ my older brother actually, when he was born, this is in 83, my mom and dad only spoke Punjabi with my brother, and so when he got to school he would speak like preschool, kindergarten, he would speak Punjabi with the Goric kids, and that's when they were just like, like they kind of had to reevaluate the situation. But other than that, like because of my older brother, my younger brother and I, we all spoke English with each other, so that transition into school was a lot easier because we had exposure to both English and Punjabi. With amongst siblings ਅਸੀਂ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਬੋਲਦੇ ਸੀ, ਮਾਂ ਪਿਓ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਬੋਲਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ, so bilingual ਹੋ ਗਏ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ। ਅਤੇ so I would say ਫਿਰ ਮੇਰੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਹੋਇਆ, but I have seen that, to answer the question. ਹਾਂਜੀ। ਸੋ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਛੋਟੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇਹਦੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਸ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਇਹਦੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਸ ਹੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸਮਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗੀ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ। ਅਤੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਲਾਈਕ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਵੀ ਓਕੇ, ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਕੀਰਤਨ ਕਰਨਾ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤਾ ਉਦੋਂ ਇਟ ਵਾਜ਼ ਨਾਈਸ, ਰਾਈਟ, ਵੀ ਆਈ ਕੈਨ ਰੀਡ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ, ਆਈ ਕੈਨ ਲੁੱਕ ਐਟ ਅ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਐਂਡ ਆਈ ਕੈਨ ਰੀਡ ਇਟ ਇਨ ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼, ਰਾਈਟ। It wasn't until I became an adult and we were in recession in 2009. I had finished my practicum as a teacher. I was a science teacher. I'm a biochemist, right? And that's what my degree was in. So I'm passionate. I'm looking for a science job. And at that point, the thing that shocked me, and to this day, like it's ingrained in my head how important it is I couldn't find a job anywhere because we were in recession. And so as soon as I heard from Burnaby South, they were looking for a Punjabi teacher. I got a job based on just being able to read, write, and speak Punjabi. They were so desperate to find a Punjabi teacher because the program was going to die down. They couldn't find anyone. And the trustees, Mrs. Narang, she was the chair trustee. She was passionate about keeping it alive. And so I had a contact. I had a friend, Sonia Taliwal was her name. And she was like, hey, I can help you. Let's connect Dilpreet Ghtaura with this because she's looking for a job out in Richmond. And in Richmond, where I learned Punjabi, that program was dying down. It was already shut down. And I'm thinking in my head, hey, let's start the program up again in Richmond. So I kind of am just in the process of starting to generate a new movement. But Burnaby already grabbed me by then. They're like, just come over here. And so, yeah, the reason I got hired, and at a young age, I was 25 years old. It's unheard of in that 2009 to 2012 time, because they weren't hiring teachers. It was a really bad time. Teachers were getting laid off left, right, and center because of the recession. I got hired, thank you to this language. So it was my colleague. I did my PDP with her. Her name is Sonia Taliwal. And she was already teaching at Burnaby South at that point. And the current Punjabi teacher there, her name was Gurjot Bens. She was taking off on educational leave. So she's going to go do her master's. And they were looking for a filler. Like, we need someone to keep this program alive. And the reality is nobody wanted to do it. And the reason was because there are horror stories around teaching Punjabi. You know, kids, behavior issues and all that. And so I took the project on because Sonia was like, it's something you want to do, so here's an opportunity, and I took it. Yeah. They were very excited, very happy, very proud. And so with my dad in particular, being involved in Canadian Sikh studies, he was saying that if you need any resources, that on Kent Avenue, they have a place there where there's just so many resources. He's like, "Itthe aake, dekh lo." And yeah, but it was a really positive response. To be honest, being born and raised here, I know a couple of things about the differences between how Malway and Doabe speak, but I don't know it all, right? A part of that is because my dad always never taught us any of that stuff, right? Like, we always knew what the different dialects were, like, hey, that this exists, different accents, right? But it never got into that, like, any more than that, right? And with my dad, his story is that he came here in 1972. So he said that he was Malway himself, but he was surrounded by Doabe people, and as a result of that, he says that he was 21 years old. So he's like, the Punjabi I started to pick up was now a little bit of a mix, right? And because your surroundings influence you. Like, a prime example is, like, whenever my husband picks up the phone, he'll always be like, yo, what's up? I used to always say, hey, how's it going? And then I met him, and now I find myself saying, yo, what's up, when I pick up the phone, right? So these differences, and, like, it depends on your sangat, who are you hanging out with? And so what's happening in the dialect today, honestly, that's a tough one. I feel like there's different versions, right, on the spectrum. Like, there's, like, the kids that only know, like, 1 or 2 words, kids that are speaking fluently, kids that are from India extremely fluently, that are texting in Punjabi English, and then there's, like, yeah, that's kind of it. And how are they being preserved? I don't know. At this point, I don't know. I'd have to wait and see. And then all of a sudden, I started learning it here in high school at Cambie. And it was done by a woman born and raised in Kamloops. She could connect with us. She taught us Punjabi in English, if that makes sense, which is what I find myself doing, right? So there's a science to learning Punjabi, like your adjectives, your nouns, and how it works, right? So she had to explain it to us in English, and then we would then learn it that way, right? So to answer your question, I use that format. And I started in 2012. It worked so well for me. So that's why it was important, because it was Simrat being somebody honestly born and raised here, going through the PDP education system on how to become a teacher, somebody we can connect with, somebody we can relate to is teaching us Punjabi. So if she is able to give me that gift, then for me, like, and what has that gift done for me? Well, I can read the Guru Granth Sahib, thank you to that. I do Paat, I do Nitnem, thank you to that. I've connected with Gurbani, thank you to that. Gurbani has become an essential part of my being, thank you to that. So that's my religious connection to the language, right? If I can do that for somebody, right? Or be, this language could be an asset because, you know, they decide that, I don't know, at some point their careers might, like how mine is, right? Be around Punjabi speaking and Punjabi writing and reading, or they're bringing people together in whatever pedestal they have, right? Then I have done a service, right? And so I'm super passionate about it, and I'm super excited that I get to give students this opportunity, just like I had mine. Yeah. So my class is interesting. Every class, jadon main shuru kardi hain, I say take out your cell phones. I am an anti-cell phone teacher, by the way. My science classes, I collect them all and I lock them up. Punjabi class is the one class I'm like, take out your cell phones, find an article. Find something that's interesting. I don't care if it's about Harry and Meghan, right? Like it could be celebrity news, or it could be the coronavirus, it could be Trump, it could be whatever you're interested in. So they find that article, and the first 15 minutes of class, like they're just trying to translate that article in their head. So it's like, imagine you're telling your grandma what's happening with the coronavirus. How would you explain that to her? So I walk around and I help the kids out, and they'll say things like, how do you say this word? How do you say death? How do you say that, right? And I'll be like, maut or that, or sometimes I'm like, I don't even know the words. And I'm like, let's pull out Google Translate, right? And so we kind of get them all to say sentences. My 11s, 10s, and 12s are working on grammar development. And then when we finish the grammar portion in this term, then we'll probably do a group project together. And that could be history. And it could, sometimes, depending on, you know, what we've already done, it's presented in Punjabi. Sometimes it's presented in English. So that's always up to me. So that's kind of how my class is structured. Yeah, because, you know, the material could be written again. I mean, once again, it's about commitment and time. I've thought about it, like to rewrite all of it. But, you know, or I'm sure the other teachers have as well. There are some good resources out there, but it's working. The Let's Learn Gurumukhi is currently working for me. That's through my projects portion, the project portion of the class, which is all about, you know, studying the history, studying the culture. So yes, there's a good balance. Three terms, so every term there's a component of grammar, and then there's a component of like some sort of project. The kinds of projects that we've done in these last 8 years, I'll be honest, some of these I was looking at I can't even remember, like, did I assign this? Like music projects, you know, like history projects. There's one on like, there's just so many different topics. You know, there's a big spectrum. It almost sometimes even turns into like a social justice class, to be honest. There's so many topics. So that's a part that kind of brings us all together. And then the grammar part is kind of where we all individually kind of work. Yeah. We talk about a lot of like I brought about like social justice issues, right? So I think there was like a while back that there was this video that was trending where I it was probably about 3 months ago of like these WhatsApp, you know, videos where there was a fight at a hall because Punjabi people, they just got drunk and like, you know, sort of fighting each other. The groom got thrown into the cake, and then there's a Singh that came and slapped a lady, right? So there's like sometimes like things like that, like people take Snapchats and they put it in. We talk about those things in class, right? Like, this has happened. How does it make you feel? Okay, why are Punjabi people so well, like, why are they identified as just drunks? Well, where is that coming from? Moving forward, how could we change that about our culture? What could we change about these parties, these receptions that it seems like our lives revolve around, right? Weddings, right? So we have a lot of difficult conversations in class, right? And just to kind of bring awareness and almost like coaching, like, you know, how to deal with it, because it's something we're all dealing with at home, right? So yeah.
And the kids respond well.
Oh yeah, they're into it. They're into it. There's a aspect of mental health sometimes that you even bring into the class, like in Punjabi culture, or depression ki cheez hundi hai, things like that, right? Like anxiety, things like that. What is this, right? And so we have conversations, and I always throw it in their court, like, hey, what do you guys think? How would you deal with something like this? How could we make it better? How could we bring education around this topic? And then at the end, if I need to, if they haven't already covered it, I'll put my 2 cents in there. And sometimes I don't, because the kids themselves come up with such amazing responses that I don't need to. Yes, in the sense that I feel that when the 9s come into the class and they have to learn the Penti, they think it's the hardest thing in the world. They are just like, we can't do it, it's too much work, and for whatever reason, and I always find that the older kids are like, trust me, once you learn the Penti and the accents, it's just smooth sailing from there. So there is that conversation piece.
So there's another aspect of
there's that. That's with the language. And then as far as the older that you get, like when you're in grade 11 and you're in grade 12, like the students that weren't able to speak in grade 9 about certain issues, about social justice or community issues or whatever it is, mental health issues, they're now more confident because they've done more presentations or more experienced, right? So I do find that the older kids tend to like have that more say or put their hand up, and they want to actively be involved in that conversation. And then the younger ones kind of just look at them like this, like, okay, like, you know, they're speaking. And yes, every year in my 8 years, I see that gradual shift where then the 9s become 11s and 12s eventually, and then they start to passionately speak out about how they feel about certain topics. Yeah. I'm very proud of it, to be honest. I think opportunities sanu bahut ਵੱਡੀ ਮਿਲੀ ਹੈ. I don't think ਅਸੀਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਲੋਕ we're taking advantage of it enough, but I'm very proud, very happy, very satisfied. Always. It's a lifelong mission, right? But we live in a country where we're so blessed to be here. It's so diverse. I think especially in Burnaby, any given class, whether it's a science class, only in my Punjabi class obviously wouldn't fit under this, but you look to your left and you look to your right and you're not going to see the same color. You're not going to see the same ethnicity. So we're very blessed to live where we live, and to have the pedestal that we've created, to have Jagmeet Singh where he is, right? This is honestly a big celebration of our people, of the 100-year history. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. I think, I don't think on a provincial level or federal level anything needs to be done. I think on a personal level, I think second generation families now need to have a hard look in the mirror, and they need to ask themselves, what do they want? Do they want to let this language die, or do they want to actually keep it going? So I think that's the push right now. ਪ੍ਰੋਵਿੰਸ਼ਲ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੁਛ ਕਰਤਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ, ਫੈਡਰਲ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੁਛ ਕਰਤਾ, ਪਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਕੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਆ? ਐਂਡ we're failing. ਅਸੀਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਰੌਲਾ ਪਾਈ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਵੀ you know, get language boards, get this, and we're doing great. What are we doing in our homes? We're doing nothing. So I think in the coming years, in the coming decade, if we can work on that base and that education, ਫਿਰ ਹੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਥਾਂ ਤੇ ਹੋਵਾਂਗੇ to look at the federal and provincial level and be like, okay, now give us more. That's what I feel. I think the more languages that you know, ਜਿੰਨੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਆ, ਉਨਾ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ successful ਹੋਵੋਗੇ. You can be successful in different realms of life, education, academics, ਜੋ ਵੀ ਹੋਵੇ in your career, right? But if you can't communicate, right, then you're you know, whether that's ASL, it's sign language, American Sign Language, right? Whether it's French, whether it's Punjabi, you know, I think it's important to grow. And I think the more languages you learn, the better. ਜਿਹੜੀ Punjabi hai personal aa jandi hai because it's a part of our identity. It's a part of who we are. And so it's very important. It's incredibly important. I'm going to go back to the work needs to be done on a personal level. Family, second generation, third generation, because that's where we're at, right? When 100 ਸਾਲ ਦੀ history ਹੈ ਸਾਡੀ, ਹੁਣ ਅਸੀਂ second, third generation ਤੇ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ, some even more, ਹੈ ਨਾ? Some are even in their fourth generation, fifth, right? I know one of my colleagues, her kids are sixth now. right? So it's we've come a long way, but we are at no point now looking at let's get our name in any, I don't know, on any sign or whatever. I think we need to look at ourselves in the mirror and we need to ask, what piece of, like, what's our kids' identity? ਸਾਡੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਈਡੈਂਟੀਟੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਕੀ ਹੈ? ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਨਾ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਬਾਰੇ ਸਿਖਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ and leave Punjabi out, we're failures, because the Guru Granth Sahib is written in Punjabi, and if you peel the layers to the Guru Granth Sahib, the only way you're going to peel those layers is if you understand Punjabi and Punjabi culture. So many references to culture. There's so many shabads about like Kant and Sohagan over and over again. It's all about that union of marriage and the roles, even the gender roles, or in given as an analogy, right? If our kids are going to read this and they're going to scratch their heads and be like, whoa, lal rang, what's the significance? Lal rang tisko laga jiske vadpaga. What is the significance of that? If we can't teach our kids that culture, or that, like, yes, we could address certain issues, but if we are going to connect them to Sikhi and we think we can do that without Punjabi, you're in the dark. Yeah.